In my life, I've been part of 3 different running clubs with 3 different coaches. My coaches and teammates were all a little different, and so were the team atmospheres, but they were all positive. I took this for granted, thinking that running is just a more positive sport than other sports, like gymnastics, for example, where you often hear about coaches yelling at athletes and teammates competing against each other. Unfortunately, in the last few years, I've heard and read about many situations in running teams where the atmosphere is not positive. And it makes me wonder if being part of a positive team is just luck. Well, today's book by high-level coach and ex-pro runner Marc Coogan actually talks about building a good training environment. Hi, and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review books written for runners, about runners, and by runners to help you decide if you'd like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running, or maybe inspire you to try something new. My name is Liz, and with my co-host Alan, we're going to talk with authors Marc Coogan and Scott Douglas about their new book, Personal Best Running.
So let me give you a quick book overview. Personal Best Running is a 2-part training manual outlining Coach Coogan's coaching practice and training plans. Part 1 includes 5 chapters about theory. 1, Coach Coogan's training principles. 2, building a good training environment. 3, staying strong and healthy. 4, using your mind to run faster. God forbid that we'd have to use our legs. 5, being a student of the sport. Part 2 of the book includes 9 chapters, starting with a chapter about mastering the skill of racing and a chapter that describes how to follow the programs. The rest of the part 2 includes plans for training for races from 1 mile up to the marathon. And the last 2 chapters for racing many events in a short period and training for a quick transition from one race to another mile, and still lives in Massachusetts today. A little bit about Scott Douglas. Welcome again, Scott. Scott Douglas is a contributing writer for Runner's World and author and co-author for several well-known running books, including one that we know and love very well, Advanced Marathoning, also Running is My Therapy, MEB for Mortals, and 26 Marathons. Scott's writing has also appeared in The Atlantic, Washington Post, Slate, and Outside. Most importantly, Scott is a second-time guest of Running Book Reviews podcast. That's got to be a fantastic thing to put on your CV, Scott.
Yes.
Need to add that to your bio.
Yes.
So welcome, Marc and Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We'll start you off with the usual intro question. How did this book come about? What made you decide to write this book? And how did you decide to write it together?
I can answer that. A few years ago, the publisher, Human Kinetics, got in touch with me, asking me if I would be interested in writing a training book, because I was having some success with the women that I coach and the team. And I think people kind of like the way that I go about building a team. And so when this lady, her name's Michelle, got in touch with me, I immediately got nervous and scared, and it was like, there's no way I just can't do it. I got the Olympic trials coming up, and I couldn't handle deadlines. I told her, I don't, the last thing I want to do is come home at night after, working during the day and have to sit down and start working on a book. And I said, I just can't do it. And then I think COVID kind of hit a little bit. She got back to me at another point, and she said, you can have someone help you write the book. And I said, well, I do have a friend, Scott Douglas. And she said, oh, we love Scott. He's already done a few books. So I think I texted Scott or emailed him or something and asked him if he would be up for this. He said, yes, thank God, because it wouldn't be a book without Scott. That's for sure. And it was good because I knew Scott in college. I'd run with him a handful of times over the years. We have a lot of close mutual friends that both make us laugh, and we enjoy being around. So it was great to get our friendship back together at the same time, and write this book together. So that's kind of how it happened. So once Scott came on board, we could make this thing happen. And we did a lot of interviews. I went to his house a few times, talking on the phone a ton, lots of emails, lots of back and forth and things like that.
And who did you write the book specifically for? Because this is not a beginner's book.
Yeah, we kind of it's not, we didn't write it for beginners. Something it's not like a couch to 5K or something like that, but it's for people that enjoy running, that are probably in the local running club or ran in high school, like that understand the basics of the sport. But one thing that we did do with this book is, like I told Scott, like I was a little bit nervous writing a book because I'm not an exercise physiologist, and like I can't tell you exactly what's going on in the body, like when you're training hard. Like I don't know how many mitochondria you're going to make in your muscles on a 20-mile run, or I don't know exactly what the the proper level of ferritin you want, or red blood cell count and things like that. But I have a general idea, and I understand it, but I'm not a scientist. And I said to Scott, that makes me nervous, because he wrote the book with Fitzy, and Fitzy's like an exercise phys guy, and a lot of people have these really big PhDs in exercise science, and I don't have that. And Scott took that as a positive that I didn't have that, and he's like, well, let's write the book in the way that you talk, the way you sound, the way you coach, and we'll get your way out there, because obviously it's working, and it's better to be in, I think Scott said this, or I said it before, you want to know the science, but you don't need to be an expert in the science. You have to be an expert in people, and being a good guy, and an expert in being a good person is what makes you a better coach. So that's kind of what we did, right, Scott?
Yeah, and I would say that the primary target audience would be not too dissimilar from that of advanced marathoning. But with the range of distances targeted, obviously not just the marathon, but people like yourselves who are very dedicated to their running, care about their performance, want to do the best they can within the constraints of all the other responsibilities that they have going on. And one thing that I think makes Marc really qualified to write such a book is all the time that he spent coaching at, not just like the local community college, but very, very, in Dartmouth, like an Ivy League school, like very demanding schools where they are students first and athletes second, in the same way that almost all of us are, whatever we do for work and our family and all that sort of stuff first. And as much as we love running, it's not the only thing, it's not the main thing in our lives. So that's that's who I had in mind when I would try to guide what to have Marc, out of all that he knows, sort of distill down to the reader of the book. And Marc in his role at New Balance has written, worked with a lot of sort of everyday runners also. That's one reason I was interested in getting involved in the project, is because like Marc has all this knowledge, a great ability to sort of distill what many of us make too complex into a simple but effective, and simple isn't the same as easy. Simple but effective approach to getting the best out of yourself in your running while also meeting all your other responsibilities.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you say distilling the complex into something that's, I guess, decomplexified, not necessarily easy, but distilled down, it's clear from the start that your book begins with the principles rather than here's what you should be going out and doing and getting into the nuts and bolts. It starts with here's some basic principles. When I talk to people, and they go, oh, should I be doing this or that? I was saying to Liz today, I tend to say, well, run lots of miles and just do a few of them fast. There you go. There's something to work with. You're not even at that point yet, and you're not as beginner, as novice as that, but you do have, like, I think it's 5 principles that you talk about at the start of the book, Marc. Maybe you could tell us a bit more about those.
Yeah, I think I think the main thing, like they're all a little bit related to each other. And I think when Scott and I were talking, like I don't know how we exactly came about it, but like I would just talk to Scott about different things that he came up with the topics, and we would talk about it for an hour or 2 or 3 hours, or I'd go see him, and I just told him, like, this is what I think. I think you need to be an aerobic monster. And like I think that's just one of them, I think. So like let's look at that for a sec. So I really feel like the example I always use, and I've used on a podcast before, is like I don't think a 5 minute mile, running a 75-second 400 meters is that hard, right? And I think if you do two of them, that's a 230, 800, right? But still 275s. But the third one gets a little bit harder on that third lap. You run 345, and you're like, oh, that's a little bit tough. And then you have to throw another 75 out there. But like almost everybody can run 175 pretty easily. But the hard part is putting four together without taking a break. And so I think that's one of my big principles, is like being an aerobic monster, being that beast that you're strong enough to, run the 475s or the 480s, 520s, you want to do 80s or whatever. I think that's a huge thing. Just like like ideas like that. That's how we kind of work through it.
Yeah, so the kind of related to that, you also mentioned like 10 weeks of B workouts is better than 4 weeks of A workouts. And like we hear this often, but I think it doesn't really sink in. So how are 10 weeks of, let's say, well, you say B plus workouts, which just means like we would consider them, not those workouts, I guess, that you feel like you've reached some next level, or that like are predicting some kind of personal best. Or like the regular workouts that like you hit the times, but the times are not spectacular.
Right. Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think I actually think that like if you're looking like at world class training now, that's even happening a little bit more like at the world class level. If you're looking at like Ingebrigtsen or something, he's kind of does this all the time. But my idea is you're better off doing, the 10 good weeks, not missing any days. When you do your workout, you're running hard, but when you're done with your interval session or tempo run, you feel like you could have done another interval. You could feel like you could have done, gone a little bit further in the tempo run. And that way you recover a little bit quicker. You stay a little bit more healthy, I think. If you're doing these all out A plus type sessions, you're probably going to get a little bit more muscle damage. You're probably gonna get a little bit more exhausted. The next day, you're not going to feel as well, and if you get injured, then you're missing a few days. So like you're better off having in 10 weeks getting 20 good sessions in, instead of doing like 3 really hard sessions and then missing the next 2 because you're beat up or you're exhausted or you got run down and caught a cold or something like that. So consistency, over the long run is, to me, much more important. And the way I coach the people on New Balance Boston is like we're almost like really do follow the book. Like we really do a lot of B plus stuff. Like we did a tempo run today at like between 525 and 530 mile pace for just for 20-25 minutes, with a woman that ran 359 for the 1500 the other day. So she's a sub 4 minute 1500 meter runner. Now she's back running 530 pace, but she's still working on her threshold, and she's still going to improve her VO2 max a little bit by doing that type of work. So I think being healthy in the long run is one of the most important things.
Sorry to become the interviewer, but Marc should talk about his own personal experience with this principle. Marc mentioned that we have a couple mutual friends who Marc ran with in college. And 2 of those guys I can think of, I know that their 1 mile and 2 mile PRs, they set in practice at college.
Oh, no.
They raced every workout and never ran up to their potential. And maybe Marc, just take a few minutes to tell about like your progression within the first year of graduating from college.
Right. So like when I was in college, I 100% overdid it in the workouts. We were always we were a pretty good team. I went to the University of Maryland. We were a pretty good team. We were always knocking on the door, doing well at nationals or something like that. And but we always raced our workouts, and we just thought like, going hard in practice was going to make us better on race day, whereas we probably went into the races a little bit fatigued and probably could have raced better. I mean, I know we could have raced better if we were a little bit smarter. And then when I graduated from college, I started running with some Irishmen and Englishmen that went to Providence College, like really good people that won World Cross and medals in the Olympics. And I ran with Billy Rogers a little bit. So I ran with a lot of really good people. And I was really surprised. I was telling Scott this. I was really surprised, like, to see how easy they ran. Like even on their hard days, like I could keep up with somebody on, when they're doing, 400s on the track, I could keep up with them easily. And they're, a minute and a half faster than me over 10K or something like that. And I realized that they weren't overdoing it in practice, and they were well rested when they went to a race. And so when they went to the race, they could do their, quote, A+ type effort, but they were doing all their B work in sessions, in their interval sessions. And once I figured that out, my running really did improve. Like I went from like a 14-minute 5K guy down to 13:30 in like 4 months.
Wow.
And it was just because I was training a little bit smarter. And I learned from these guys. They kind of took me under their wings and treated me really nicely.
And also, like, even if it does work for the best people in the world, which it doesn't, but even if it did, like, that's not most of us, right? And like, who wants to go to bed on Tuesday night, like thinking about in the morning before work, I have to like go like use up all my mental capital for the day on this workout, like eventually you're just gonna bag it.
It's not sustainable.
So even if it did work, which it doesn't, it's not really realistic for, to get back to who the book is for. It's not really realistic for most of, our readers.
Yeah. And like I learned that too, like what Scott was just saying about the willpower. I coached Abbey D'Agostino at Dartmouth, and school was really hard for her, and she was a real plugger. So she was always like sleep deprived and like really trying to do well academically. And she's the one that told me like I only have so much willpower, and she like, she got me to read about it, and I learned that. So like once I learned like people only have so much willpower, like you can't spread them too thin, because that's when they're going to lose their drive, or they're going to get, worn out, or just they're going to get depressed. And so like, I think once I realized that too, it made me a better coach also.
And how do you, how would you explain what to do? Because it sounds like, in a group atmosphere, you have usually athletes, like they're always training together. They're in some kind of a pace group together. You sort of know their paces, and if they're running B paces or if they're running A paces, because all of their times. But like, let's say you're in a club environment, it's more of a responsibility on the athlete. So I don't know if you have any experience like trying to explain it to an athlete, like how it should feel to be, like slightly undercooked instead of always overcooked.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that I think probably the more that you run, or as you get used to the sport, you start to learn your body a little bit more. Like, I mean, even Alan at the beginning of this said he's running faster now than when he did when he was younger, and it's probably because he has a better understanding of recovery and how, he probably can't do some of the things he did when he was 25 now that he's a little bit older than that. And I think that in like a running club, I think that other people in the club, because if you have a lot of people, the coach can't see everybody, like I can see my whole team every day. But if you're in a big running club, the coach or coaches can't talk to everybody, but maybe the person that you run with a lot, or your training partner, gets to know you really well and can read your body language. Like I can read my team's body language, just like when they're warming up and doing their strides before we start a session, if they're going to have a good workout or not, almost, and like I make a point to ask them how they're feeling in between intervals and things like that, and get some feedback, and I think once, you trust yourself, or your training partner, your coach, you trust them enough to actually tell them how you're feeling, and you're not faking it or hiding stuff, like that's when you really can start taking off, and your training is going to go really well. Does that make sense?
Yeah. From a club athlete point of view, is that one of the basic things that maybe people trying to learn to get their Boston qualifier or whatever, is that one of the basic things that they get wrong? they're going, oh, I don't feel really too tired, so I mustn't be working quite hard enough.
Yeah.
I'll do a little bit more. Oh, I feel a bit tired now, so that's probably a good workout. Is that wrong, basically?
I I I think it is wrong. Basically, I think once in a while you got to do you got to go harder, a little bit harder, just to see exactly where you're at. But like I would say, 90% of the time, I think you're better off walking away from a workout, feeling good about yourself, feeling like you could have done one more, having that positive experience instead of like running so hard that you're lying down on the track and you can't even go get water or change your shirt or whatever, and then you go home and you can't move, you're stiff. And, like I think like my team, this afternoon, I won't have practice this afternoon. I had this morning, but, the woman that broke 4 minutes the other day, her name's Emily Mackay. And, I said, Emily, get back out again this afternoon for a half hour or so. And, she's like, is it okay if I just do 20, 25 minutes and get a good stretch in? And I was like, absolutely. That's like, let's cut it a little bit short and, and stretch and feel good and, walk away because she had a good workout this morning and feel good about herself. So I think you're spot on, Alan.
I would say, I would add, like, for people who don't have a coach, even if you feel like in these workouts that like, no, I wasn't, if you maybe can convince yourself like, oh, I could have done one more or whatever. But if you regularly feel like 2 days later, you're like, boy, I'm like that you're still feeling that workout, that you're still dragging. And that becomes, if you sort of notice that regularly, then I think that's a good sign that it's like, you need to recalibrate what B+ means for you. I mean, especially, I don't think anybody here talking today is 25 years old, I mean, especially as we get older, I think that becomes, it took me a real long time to like see these patterns, like, oh, I'm still tired 2 days later, or 3 days later, once I got to be like 45 or whatever. So I think that'd be one way. And I mean, in addition to like being honest with yourself, as Marc said, on the workout itself, like, could I have done, 2 more 800s at that pace, and that being an example of being, we like to think of discipline as like, I'm going to push myself as hard as possible at all times. But that too can be an example of being a disciplined runner is not going to the well, 8 times a month.
So since we're on the topic of training, so you mentioned a few things about training. One of them was, I mean, we often hear about having easy days that are really easy and hard days that are hard. But you actually also mentioned that you like your athletes to have days that are much longer than other days. So you'll have like long days and short days. How's that beneficial? Or is that sort of lining up with the easy day, hard day principle?
I mean, it lines up a little bit, but I think if you do the same thing every day, right, at some point you're not going to improve anymore. I mean, I don't know what the scientific name for it is, but like if you go to the weight room and you just bench and do squats and that's all you do, at some point you're not going to improve anymore. So you have to have you have to diversify your lifting and have other, do other exercises and lifts. And I think that's the same theory would hold to running. And so I think you get improvements by doing different distances and different lengths or whatever. But I also think that it's refreshing too. So like, you might have a long run on the weekend and you're looking forward to it and you get excited about it. But then on Monday, you're going to be happy you only have to do a half hour or something like that. You're like, wow, hey, I feel, wow, thank God I only have to do, 30 minutes today and, I have a busy day at work. And so I think that it's like it works two ways. One, it's, you got to improve your fitness, and the other one is mentally more approachable or refreshing, I would say.
I'm sorry, listen, Alan, I'm curious if you all, either in your own running or people been sort of person like, I have to do X number of miles today or it doesn't count as a real day.
Yeah.
And that's
I'll put a green tick in my box if I don't do that.
Yeah. And that I think a lot of people over time, if they were honestly then looked at their progression, would see that that in itself could be a limiting factor because, I'm just picking up a number, but say, oh, it's not a real day unless I run 7 miles, or whatever. I'm just making something up.
Mm-hmm.
And on Saturday, I should go 17. But come Saturday, you're just sort of like, well, 10 would be 10's still longer than 7. So that sort of counts as a long run,
Yeah.
as opposed to this greater variety while still running the same number of miles a week.
Mm-hmm.
What
I think,
I mean, it's always like, what do the best people in the world do? Like they probably know what they're doing. So why not, why not avail yourself of that knowledge?
I've actually noticed that in the advanced marathon plan, when we're following that, because it's got several long runs. I mean, they're not all called long runs. You have your long run, and then you have your medium long runs, and sometimes there are like 2 of them in the week. But then it means that some of the other runs are much shorter. Like, so today we had 21-kilometer medium long run, but tomorrow we have a 10K easy run. So I feel like, but that's much more varied than what we would usually do. Because usually, I mean, I don't know about you, Alan, but like normally what I do is it's probably between 10 and 13 kilometers every day. Except the long run. Like the long run will be, longer. But yeah, it's much like this, the advanced marathon plan. When we do that, it's like there are many more peaks and valleys kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's going to keep you refreshed and maybe a little bit more healthy. I think that, like, if you do that, if you go into like a marathon type workout, if you've had a day or two, maybe, if you're not really trying to hit a high mileage week or something, like if you have a couple easy days before you do a marathon session, the hard workout will be a little bit easier if you come into it rested, you don't want to train your butt off all week and then run a race on Saturday without, taking a few easy days leading in. And I think just having a really good workout mentally is just going to set you up for the next week or the next few days of training. And I feel like there's not I personally don't feel like there's like a ton of difference between someone doing, 10K or 12K. I think at the end of the day, like they're almost the same thing. Or if you're doing a real long run and you're doing, like, say you're going to do like a marathon type training on a long one, like 40K or something. I don't think there's much difference between 36K and 40K. I think you're going to be out there long enough, to remember what the marathon feels like, or get used to drinking your fluids or taking fuel in, or what shoes you're going to wear, or if you're going to simulate the course you might be racing for the marathon somehow. I think so. Like, to me, like, for the most part, like, I usually, like if it was between 38K and 40K for a long run or something like that, I would probably say, let's just do 38K and, feel better about ourselves. Like, and I've overdone it back in the day. I would have been like, oh, I'm going to do, 26 miles. I'm going to do 42K when I probably should have just done 35 or something like that. So
I think our problem is we'll set out on a course that's 40K long. So when you get to 38K, you don't go, well, I'm 2K away from home, 2K away from the car. I might as well jog it in.
You have to run it anyway. Or you have to travel that distance anyway. So
let me ask you a bit about teams and the team effect for training, Marc, because I was sort of fascinated in the book at not that you try to have a good team, because everybody kind of does in their own way, but the amount of focus that you put on it in terms of how much you believe the environment in the team is good for the individual's performance. And even, I mean, a specific point that I sort of picked up on, you actually said that athletes who join your group, they don't get in unless all the other athletes agree. So you're sort of very careful, I think, that there's an acceptance of that person, and they can't come unless they accept that they're not there for their individual benefit alone, but also to help the team achieve their goals.
Yeah, yep, for sure. And like, I kind of like, that's like when I coached in college, that's how I would try to make my cross country team, try to have it be almost like a family. And, at Dartmouth, when I was at Dartmouth, like I told the team, like, I want practice to be your best 2 hours of the day, like your most fun, enjoyable 2 hours of the day. And once we got that like team aspect going at Dartmouth, the team started running a lot better too when they were looking out for each other instead of just being individuals. The New Balance Boston team. So we're pretty small and it's pretty intimate, but we've definitely created a family, and they are really happy when someone else in the group runs well, and they look out for each other, and they want the whole team to do well, which makes me really happy, and like I really like that. And having my daughter on the team, I think makes me a little bit better coach too, because I treat her like really well because it's my daughter, you know. So I think that I think that like the other people on the team, how would I want my daughter treated is how I would treat them too. So I think that having Katrina on the team has helped me be a little bit more compassionate, I would say, or a little bit more I don't know what the word is, but like just nicer. Like, you know, I would never like, I mean, it's not my personality to go crazy or anything like that, but I think having Katrina on the team has allowed me to tell the kids on the team that, you know, running is very important. It's your job right now, but it's not the end all be all. You know, if you don't make the Olympic team, or if you don't get to go to the world champs or something like that, you know, your best friends are still going to be there. Like making the team doesn't change the world, you know, and not making it, you know, your mom and dad are still there. Your best friends are still there. The people that you care about are still going to care about you. So I think that like that takes the edge off a little bit, like feeling like you have to do great all the time. It just creates a nice family atmosphere on the team, which I really like. I love it when they, you know, like they you know, go out to dinner together, or, you know, like they're like, oh, let's go to Marc's house and have a cookout and jump in the pool, or just like when they do stuff together, they're like best buds. And I think that I did a good job, or whoever, like the team did a good job making that happen. So I think it's huge.
Do they give you advance notice that they're going to come to your house and have a cookout?
Yeah, jump in your pool.
Most of the time. Sometimes they just show up. They might be up here this weekend because it's supposed to be so hot, and I'm supposed to go to the Newport Folk Festival, so they might be here when I'm not even here.
So I've actually heard a lot of stories about teams, and I think it's specifically like when it's like, you know, when it's women together training about like cultures of eating disorders and all that kind of stuff. And it sounds like in your sort of environment, probably that never develops. And so I don't know if you have any theories as to like why there are these kind of team cultures. Like why does this sort of happen? Is it I don't know, is it that coaches don't see it, or
I probably a little of both, maybe like don't see it or don't want to see it. I think it's a really hard sport, right? And some people like personalities are really, really driven, and they could, like, an eating issue could just happen by, you know, by accident. But I think like on my team, you know, we don't sit around and talk about food all day or anything like that. But I will say something like, you know, is everybody okay? You know, or how's everybody feeling? Everybody, you know, has what they want. Like an example would be a few months ago, I did a Zoom call with the USOC, and they had a sports psychologist on it, and they were just talking about depression. So it was just like elite coaches were on it, and the sports psychologist from Colorado Springs was talking about depression, and she was saying, you know, like in a typical year, you know, 30% of women, I'm going to butcher the numbers, but 30% of the women between ages of 19 and 27 suffer some form of depression, you know, during the year. And then post COVID, those numbers have gone up to 70%.
wow.
And yeah, and it's you know, and it's not. It could be, you know, it could just be, you know, somebody a little bit sad, or it could be even something worse, you know. And the sports psychologist was saying, what do you tell somebody that's depressed or, you know, a little bit down? Like, what do you tell them to do? You tell them to join a team. You tell them to exercise. You tell them to get out in the fresh air. you tell them exactly what we do on the team, right?
Mhm.
So like exercise, and so it's really easy for a coach to miss it or a person to miss it because like they're actually doing everything you would tell them to do anyhow to help them out. And so I was just listening to this Zoom call, and then the next day at practice, like the whole team was just sitting around, and I was like, "Listen," and this out just went low key, like, "Hey, listen, I did this Zoom call last night, and this is what they said, and I just checking in, making sure everybody's good, like very low key, and then like after practice, one of the women on the team just came into my office and said, Marc, I've been feeling like really down in the dumps. I'm not quite sure why, but thanks, thanks for saying that. And that, that made it easy for her to come talk to me. I know I digress from your original point with like eating and stuff like that, but I think that's the culture on my team. Like we do stuff like that and we try to be
Mhm.
open and out front, but not in your face,
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's a probably a multifaceted, tough issue.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
deviation from the book, but how much interference do you get from New Balance regarding all of that stuff? Like, we want to be a holistic team. We want to choose specific people who fit with our group. We don't want to put pressure on people so that they feel psychologically inadequate, etc. How much interference do you get from New Balance?
I get zero interference. So they let me do this New Balance. So I don't, the kind of way it works is it's my team. So I pick and choose who's going to be on the team, but I don't do any of the contracts. So I'm just a coach. So if like somebody's going to get a contract from New Balance, like the agent will negotiate with other people at New Balance, not me. And if they come to if they agree on what they think they're worth or whatever, then they'd be on my team if I want them on the team. But we won't put anybody on New Balance Boston unless the team wants that person and I want that person also. Um, yeah, so New Balance, they like, I mean, our office is like at the world headquarters. So
Yeah.
like, like one of the reasons we, besides wanting to have like world class runners and everything at our new track and all that, New Balance wanted to have a team in Boston where, someone could be looking out the window that has just designed a new pair of shoes and see one of the people on the team running down the street and it's gonna, I made that shoe and like feel good about themselves.
Mm.
Or if in apparel they're trying to work on running tights, like they can walk right into our locker room and ask the best runners in the world, like, what do you like or not like about this apparel and how does it work for you or not work for you, and so that those are two reasons that we have the team. And then like New Balance does a lot of community things in Boston, like a lot of outreach and helping people. And they wanted to have some professional athletes that we could go to little races in town or go to high schools or elementary schools and talk to the city kids and promote a healthy lifestyle. So it's more than just having this elite team. Like we're helping New Balance too a little bit.
Okay, it's cool. I mean, we've done that's now all that sounds fantastic, good music to our ears. But we've done quite a bit of coverage of Nike Oregon Project and various books written about that, which is a totally different story. So it's kind of good to get other
Some
types of
positive
positive stories into the environment. It's often easier for people to write books when they're sensational, rather than to write books when they're, well, actually, there's nothing to write about. Everything's fun, and there's no sensational quality in it that's going to sell. So it's good to hear that.
Yeah, and I'm
Mhm.
not saying like like you still have to work hard to be good, and like we're not saying that you don't have to put the work in or get your long runs in or get your interval sessions in. Like you still have to put all the work in, and you still have to be really dedicated. When you go to a race, you have to do all the little things correctly to have that peak type performance that you want or have that good race that you want. So we're not saying like read this book and it's easy street. This still got to train pretty hard and be serious about it and diligent about it. That's my thought.
Yeah, you still need to use your legs. And you need to use your brain as well, which we'll get to. But before that, I just thought, because we're talking about training, so there are all these super shoes out now, and in the book you actually mention that most runs should be done in regular trainers. So I know that I've had my own experience with super shoes, and I think that I got some lower leg injuries because of them. So now I run less often in anything that has a plate. So like I just save those for the hard workouts that I know I kind of need that. But I try and run in like what you just call regular trainers in the book. So like what do you think about that? How did you kind of develop this idea about how they should be used?
Basically, just kind of like what you said, like we were in them and we were getting some lower leg issues and things like that. And my teams were pretty well connected with some sports docs here, and they would tell us that they're seeing this type of thing. But I don't want to like slam the new technology either, because I think that it's still evolving a little bit, and I think that they're still improving. The new shoes are improving, so I don't know if like in the future we'll be in them more than we are now, or not in them now. But I mean, you have to have them to race, right? Because you get time. You run faster in them. There's just no question about it. But I guess the big question is now, like as the shoes are getting a little bit better, is like, do you recover quicker in them, right? So I think, I've been reading and talking to some people, and some people are saying like, I used to be only get 2 hard sessions in a week. Now with the new shoes, like I'm not getting as much muscle damage and I'm not as beat up, so I can get three type of sessions in, instead of 2. So I think it's still up for debate, or how we're going to end up using them. But we're not in the in the spikes all the time. Like we might be in the spikes only when we race, or in the carbon plated racing shoes, just like when we do a threshold run or a tempo run, and when we race, we're not in them like on day-to-day, distance runs and things like that. Yeah. So like I was a little bit down on them more back in the day, but I'm kind of evolving, I think, with them a little bit as they're getting better, How about you, Scott?
If you mean me personally, I don't race, so I don't really care. I think in general, though, I think there's starting to be, as there always is, like I think the pendulum's starting to swing a little bit away from this like mania about I'm going to do all my runs in the New Balance Super Comp Racer, or the massive stacked plated shoes. Not if you look at like what companies are coming out with now, a lot of them have like they call them like a training companion to their marathon super shoe. And those, I think, and they're like sort of incorporating some of the best ideas, but without potentially injurious things like running with a plate every day, and they're a little bit lower, so they like take some of the geometry and the great foams, but make something that's sort of like I said, I think the pendulum is swinging back, like let's get away from the extremes, because I think running in general, like operating at the extremes, never works long term for in any aspect, I don't think. But I think that among everyday runners, maybe a year or 2 ago, was like, well, I do my workouts faster than these, and I race faster than these, so why don't I wear them every day? Setting aside that these $250 shoes will then wear out in a month. I think people are realizing like it's a tool, and as with any tool, it has its best uses, and going out for an easy 8-kilometer run might not be the best use for that tool.
I guess to some extent, the evolution is still coming. Maybe it'll always be that way, but we're still evolving.
Yeah, I mean, so I did if I can digress just a little bit, I did an article for Runner's World on sort of like should you wear super shoes every day?
Yeah.
And Jared Ward, who was he was 6th in the 2016 Olympic marathon.
Yep.
So that he's like, just because you're running faster, doesn't mean you're necessarily getting more of a training benefit from that run. In the same way that if you were to run on an Alter-G treadmill, at 90% of your body weight,
yeah,
you might run faster, but you might not be getting any, or if you did all your runs on a slight, 2% downward, downhill, you'd be running faster, but you might not necessarily be getting any fitter from that session. And so he, who, has a consultancy relationship with his sponsor Saucony, was sort of like, he sort of went through that phase, and then sort of like, it just wasn't didn't seem to make sense for him. And I think more people are starting to realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we've been talking to some people who say, yeah, super shoes, you're going to have to race in those if you want the time, the performance. But maybe in some training aspects, you should be trying to get as close to barefoot in a way that is supportive for you and your ability to get your foot strength, so that you can then strengthen your foot to bring that back into the super shoes and get the maximum out of on race day.
Yeah.
So in fact, the whole thing now is not polarized one way, but maybe is going to swing to extreme directions to give different benefits for different reasons, and then apply them in different situations.
And then, and the only other thing, I mean, we're your listeners care about performance, and our book is for performance-oriented runners, but some people just don't like how they feel. It's like a necessary evil. It's like, I'll wear this racing and doing workouts because it will make me faster. But like the subjective, most of us run primarily just because we like it, right? and if the subjective feel of running is sort of feels like I'm bouncing along on marshmallows,
muffled.
It's just, and if to me that would merit maybe not wearing them all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say I'm a little like that on the track. Like I know a lot of people will wear them for track workouts, and I just find that on the track, like it's strange because I'm going the same speed, but I feel not fast. Like I just don't feel as fast if I'm wearing big marshmallowy plated shoes than if I'm wearing like, either track spikes or like something else that's, almost not a shoe at all.
Yeah, you kind of want to feel a track. I've seen you go on the track in the rain in bare feet.
Because then also it feels like slippery but weird, because like you don't feel the ground, but then it's slippery as well. So that was like strange. So I took off my shoes that time. But I don't know, it's strange, but maybe it's just because like, if you come from a track background, you're sort of used to that feeling of the spikes and not really having much there. So I don't know, I'm not really sure, but
okay, so I think a lot of conversation to conclude that things are still developing.
Yeah,
I would think so.
Can we switch to psychological strength or mental strength?
Definitely.
I think the term you use in the book is psychological strength. So tell us a bit about psychological strength. How do we develop it? We are not Kipchoge. We are not these superhuman people. How do we do this?
I think like when I studied this like pretty hard, like in grad school a little bit, and I wrote an article a long time ago about like basically mental toughness, but that's not even like a good word anymore. But I think just like learning, I don't know how. I think like training your brain is almost as important as getting out and training yourself, like physically training. And I don't, like Scott and I talked about it before. It's like, it's not about like running through a brick wall, it's like maybe it's like, no, I shouldn't run today. That's like mental strength, like, oh, because my foot hurts, so maybe I shouldn't get out there and run today, stuff like that. And I learned along the way that in coaching and studying this stuff that like your brain actually, you can wire your brain. Like, so you could, if you're visualizing, like if, I don't know, say you're doing the Toronto Marathon or something, Waterfront Marathon or something, and you're lying
this was
in
us
bed,
last year.
and you're lying in bed and you just want to visualize the race a little bit. Like just thinking about it, like your blood pressure goes up a little bit, your respiration increases, just thinking about it, right? And if you like work yourself through the race, just in your head, like, oh, I'm gonna run, I'm just making numbers up, 4 minutes a K, like I'm gonna run 4 minutes a K, 4 minutes a K, and if you can see yourself like going down the road in your head, like when the race starts, like you've already made the decision because your brain wires it like it's running a race already. So you've already like made the connections in your head. And like that's the science I don't understand, but I know it happens. Like I was saying earlier, I'm not a scientist, but and so you can already make decisions. So like when it comes to the point in the race, like, oh, I'm going to charge up this hill in the race. Like if you already thought about it like 10 times, you might have already wired your brain. And when the hill comes, you just charge up it. You don't even think about it. You don't feel sorry for yourself or anything like that. So I think like, like that's part of like being a mentally good runner. I don't know, like just lots of examples like that. I always like when I was in college, I had a sign on my wall. To be a good athlete, you have to have the capacity to suffer and the ability to stand up to continued suffering. And that was like from Percy Cerruti, who was like my little idol. And then and I always thought that was kind of cool. But you don't really have to do like you don't have to do it that way, right, Scott? Like we kind of figured it out, or I figured it out along the way, and like when you go to a race or when you're preparing for a race, you have to have you have to believe in yourself that you put the work in, the training in, and it. So you got to be honest, right? Like it's like we were saying earlier, you got to be honest about yourself and your training. So like that's a huge component of it, being honest with yourself and having realistic goals. Not like you can't say I'm going to run a 2:10 marathon when you've never broke 3 hours. So like you got to be honest with yourself. Like if you run 3:05 or something like that, you can have a good goal of saying like 2:55 or 2:57, and you can think about it and you can operate like that's going to happen. But I think having that honest opinion of it and a realistic goal, and then just trusting in yourself that you can get, like what we talk about, this unshakable belief, but that's just like really trusting yourself at the end of the day, and getting out there and letting it happen the way you believe in it.
Alan, you said, we're not Elle Kipchoge, but I'm curious what you mean by that. Elle Kipchoge isn't necessarily Elle Kipchoge. If by that you mean like he just has an ability to ignore his body or something. I think in contrast to the quote that Marc had on his wall, which is, like, oh, it's suffering and like I, welcome the pain, et cetera, et cetera. Kipchoge and successful runners, acknowledge all the negative thoughts and unpleasant sensations that are going to occur when you're working hard, but have developed personally meaningful ways to work through those situations and motivate themselves to keep trying to get the best out of themselves.
Yeah, I think my only point in saying that was not that he's faster than I am, but that he's probably mastered a lot of that stuff.
Yes.
One of the reasons he achieves is because he has already mastered it in some way. So I'm not him. But maybe he's got some things I could use.
No, I was going to say, like when I used to race, there used to be a lot of Kenyans. There would be like a ton of Kenyans in these road races, and they were all really good. And I remember just like being in the pack with them, and just telling myself the whole time, I'm okay, I'm okay. You're good, Marc. You're good, Marc. Stay, Marc. Stay, Marc. Like trying not to go negative in my head, and so I was really like a lot of positive self-talk. And I think like someone like Kipchoge, like that's what he does, I'm going to run too flat or 2 hours or whatever, and he's like, I'm on it. He's just saying positive in his head. I'm sure he has a few little keywords that he uses, and like the only thing that's going to stop Kipchoge is like an injury or something goes wrong in the training leading up to the race. Like he's not going to have a bad race if he prepares well, like Boston didn't go the right way for him because something wasn't right in his training, like he was having a quad problem or something like that, I heard. And that's why,
I mean, as someone who has had the privilege of sort of straddling these worlds, right, of like lots of access to elites for many, many years, and then being non-elite for even more years, over time, that to me, that's one of the great differences in approach is the mental aspect between most elites and then us, who are those of us who are very dedicated and performance oriented, but not elite. And I'm not saying that if we learn how to use the psychological techniques that elites do, we'll suddenly all become elite, but we can be a lot better than otherwise would be. I know lots of people, and I've certainly been like this, and on my worst days still are. Like you could have 6 days in a row of great training. You have one bad workout, and then that becomes, that's your quote reality check.
Yeah,
That's
colors
what
your reality.
that's the reality,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Elites would say that was an aberration. What can I, something, I need to fix something was wrong. So they don't, in that case, they don't take this potentially negative experience and just wallow in it. It becomes a learning experience. Conversely, I know lots of people who, like, they'll have a great workout and they'll be like, well, that was a fluke, right? And whereas the elite mindset is more like, there is evidence of what I'm capable of. I mean, because you can't do the workout unless you're capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
But then, yeah, so to me, that's always been one big difference. But over time, the biggest difference I've seen is this whole matter of self-talk, of how we address ourselves when we're working hard. And Marc gave examples from his racing, and I'm sure everybody in his team have worked out their own, variations on how to keep motivating themselves when inevitably it gets difficult, rather than, well, this race is going to crap, screw it. You just don't see, maybe 1% of elites do that occasionally. Marc might remember a guy, Fernando Mamid. You remember him?
Yep.
Yeah, had the world record for 10K in 1984, and he didn't even make the final in the Olympics, because he just ran off the track in his qualifying round, because he was just couldn't handle the pressure.
Psyched himself out.
Yeah,
and that's very rare. At that level, you just don't see that.
I think like a lot, like Scott's example was, you have 5 good days and then 1 bad workout. I think like a lot of the elites would be like, on the bad day, like I'd be like, yes, something else is wrong out here. Like, it was windy. Like, that's why I didn't run my intervals at a certain pace, or the track's long, or you come up with like something that why it didn't go well. Like, oh, it's hot and humid. No wonder 5-minute pace felt so hard. It's 90 degrees out, 90% humidity. Like, I should have just went off of effort, or I should have maybe I should have run 5:10 pace instead of 5-minute pace because it's hot out. And like on my team, we do a ton of that. Like, we do a lot of running off of effort, because it's never like I mean, you guys are just in Montreal, so like it's almost the same weather as here. Like, it's like too cold.
Half the year you're wearing 3 pairs of tights, and then the other half
it's too hot and humid. and so you have all this winter gear on, and you want to do a tempo run, at 5, I'm just making up numbers again, at 5-minute mile pace, or a little 305K pace or something. And but you have too much stuff on, it's too hard, so like so maybe it's 312 is 305, right? Because like your body doesn't know that you're going slower. It just knows that you're working. It knows how hard you're working, and it knows that feeling. So like, I love it when my team, like when we doing the tempo run this morning, I was like, yeah, I'd like it to be, somewhere around 5:25, 5:30 effort. And they're like, oh, with the weather, it's probably 5:35 pace. And that makes me feel good that they have figured out like effort is more important than hitting a specific split or time in a session. And I think once you master that, it also takes a little bit of the pressure off you, because you still had a good workout, even though you didn't hit the times like in like a laboratory environment. So I think that's really cool when my team says, yeah, we ran off the effort. We felt like we were on a 5-minute pace. And I love when I hear that.
And I think that's something that might become a little more difficult for everyday runners, because so many people have a GPS tracking every single second of every single run, right?
And then everything goes to Strava, and everybody else can see it.
Yeah. And so if you're, oh, well, the track is snowed over, I'm going to go do my kilometer repeats on the road. Of course, you're not going to run the same as you would on the track, but everybody then might see that their times are quote off, and get down on themselves, rather than having the much healthier approach that Marc and his team have.
Is all the data and all the measurement systems that we have now you get power and heart rate and inclines and heart rate variability. And is all of this a blessing or a curse?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, if you can see my watch, it's not very high tech. It's just
Yeah, it has a sundial on it. Yeah.
yeah.
I ran with one of those.
And I
Is
don't
that a
know.
Casio or something?
Yes, it's like
That's
an
a
Ironman. Yeah.
Timex, yeah.
Timex
Recog-
Ironman. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
recognize that. I've probably had five of those because
Yeah.
once you can't change the battery anymore, or the strap breaks, and then they don't sell the replacement anymore. You gotta
No.
buy
You
a
can
new
still
one.
get
But
those, can you, Marc? Did you get that on
Yeah.
eBay?
Yeah, no, you can get them. You can get
you
them.
can
can
still
get 'em.
get them because my dad wanted one recently. I had to
Yeah.
go on a hunt. I mean, you can find them on Amazon.
Yeah.
I bought one like 6 months ago off the Timex site, but you have to it took like half a day of like rooting around their site to find the Timex
Yeah.
Iron
Down on
Man.
page 423,
None.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you'd be surprised like how many like world class athletes still wear a watch like this. Not all the time, but maybe half the time to 3/4 of the time, and then they use their GPS type watches like other times. Like I was in Brussels last year, and I was sitting with Stewie McSwain. He's a really good Australian miler. Yeah. And he looked over at my watch. He's like, "Oh, Marc, I got the same watch on. I have the same watch that you wear." Because I feel like I think maybe like you're saying, having the GPS, like going up to Strava and all that stuff, it's just like undue pressure that some of these people don't want to deal with, right? Even though that's fun, it's fun to chart your runs, to see your friends' runs, and see how how you face, how you stand up against other people or what all your buddies are doing. But I think it also sometimes it's it's not the best thing for you either. But
and then like some of the other metrics, like Marc, we have an anecdote in the book where like people, athletes will say like, oh, Marc say like, oh, how'd you sleep? Oh, I thought I slept well, but my watch says I didn't. So
did you sleep well or not?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like if you just because you're provided with data doesn't mean that it has any inherent meaning, and B, even if it did, you might not know how to make use of it.
So I guess I'll just say one of the quotes that I got from the book that I really loved, and it was the watch is telling you how fast you ran. It shouldn't tell you how fast to run, which is like exactly what you just said, summed up in in 2 sentences, which is great. I think probably if you started running after GPS became like widely available, smartphones and everything like that, then it's hard to go back. But if you started running with a Timex, I think you can more ignore the data. Like I go and like recently my Garmin's been telling me that even though I ran a marathon in 3:15 like a couple months ago, it's telling me that my marathon predicted time is like 4 hours, and like I don't let it get to me.
Yeah, it's telling me mine's 2:38, which is similarly ridiculous.
Exactly.
We try to have fun with it because our group's all in mileage build at the moment because we're getting ready for an October marathon, and we're sort of building our miles with our early training.
What are you getting ready for? Is it everybody training for the same one, or
more or less? Yeah, early October local marathon here in Montreal. Normally it's been last 2 years it's been Toronto, flat and fast. This year we're not traveling and it's slightly downhill. It's called the Petit Train du Nord. You probably won't have heard of it. It's a sort of.
It's pretty small. I think the limit is like 1,200 people for the start, and but we do have a few of our teammates that are going to Chicago because it's sort of the same. I think it's a week after our marathon. Yeah, so we're all getting ready for that like beginning of October.
The good thing is we can actually go there. We can actually go there at the weekend and run on the course.
You can see it.
We can do some real live trials. We're going to do that this weekend. But my point was, with our mileage build, we're trying to have fun with the data in Strava. this morning because well, yeah, I think it was yesterday. It was because it was the first day of the Strava week. Liz's husband, Andre, he did the first run early in the morning, logged 10K, and then took a snapshot of the league table with him in first place and everybody else on 0, and then published it to everyone saying, I'm on top of the mileage board this week, like 10 minutes into the week.
Yeah, for the next hour.
Yeah.
So, kind of in the same vein of, we're talking about GPS watches and, maybe taking them too seriously. So I think from what I understood from the book, professional runners are good at pushing themselves when it counts, like in a race, but they're also good at like backing off, kind of like you explained in your example. But do you need to teach that, or is that just like a skill they come with?
No, I think it's definitely a learned skill, right? Because like at first everybody wants to do their best, and I think everything, and you think that's going all out at like 100 miles an hour, like 100% all the time. So I think you have to learn it. And I don't know, like I think some people learn it the hard way with like a stress fracture or an injury or something, but I think other people learn it from teammates on their team. So like an older kid, like if you're in college, it might be a senior on the team explaining to a freshman that you don't have to nail it every day. Or like on my team, like some of the newer kids, like I specifically have to tell them to run easy, like just run easy today. Like you don't have to be a hero today, like there's like a thing that I always see now in running is like people run a mile, like race a mile or race something short on the track, and then they're doing a workout after, and after their race that day, and like I haven't really bought into it, and I'm always like some people on my team, like the other nights, someone ran an 800, and she's like, "Should I do something after?" And I was like, listen, we're in Monaco. It's hot. Like you're tired just with jet lag and stuff. Like let's not get greedy and overdo it and be, dinged up and sore tomorrow. And she had a really good workout this morning in Belgium, and she's racing on the weekend. So I think like we made the right decision. So I think you definitely learn it. I don't think that's just inside you, because people that want to do well, like they want to smash it all the time until they learn that's not the way to do it.
And what about being a student of the sport? So you kind of have a bunch of stories about when you were running and, you'd meet all these pros and all the things you learned from just like talking to everybody. And now we have the internet,
Right.
which is just all the information that you could ever want, whether it's good or bad, all in one
Right.
place.
Yeah.
So how do you be a student of the sport today? Like, do you encourage your athletes to learn from each other, or to learn from magazines, or
That's a really good question. I think that like I talked to them about different people from the past that had a positive influence on me, and like if I asked my whole team tomorrow, I was like, who knows who Joan Benoit is? I don't think my whole team would. A few of them would know who Joni is, but they all wouldn't. Or
It's kind
Billy
of
Rogers.
crazy. It's crazy to
It's
imagine,
crazy.
really.
To me,
Yeah.
it's like
Unimaginable.
yeah, it's like, how is it that you don't know who that is?
yeah. Or like they wouldn't know who Frank Shorter is, or Zatopek, or Brendan Foster, or
Yeah.
Seb Coe, like Johnny Walker, like so like I talked to them.
They might know the other Johnny Walker.
Yeah, I know him.
But so I think like I tell them stories a little bit. They see stuff on, like they know the people. I think people now, like nowadays, like they know their contemporaries a lot better than like we knew them, like when we were growing up, because everything's out there. But I don't think they know the past quite as well. And I think you can learn a lot from some of the great runners in the past. Yeah. So I think it's important to be a good student of the sport, and we talk about it. And like my daughter's on the team, and she's always like cracking up, because every race she goes to, she's like, "Oh, I know your mom." People say, "I know your mom and dad," or like Johnny Gregoric comes and runs with us a lot, and his mom and dad were great runners, and like he's like, oh yeah, Katrina, I hear it all the time. Oh, I used to run with your dad, or your dad was this and that. And I don't know. I think like my group kind of hears it from me, or a little bit, I guess just think that it would be better if they knew the sport a little bit better, because like there were some characters back in the day that are just like, they're fun to read about and learn about.
Mhm.
Yeah. We covered the book by Philbert Bailly, Catch Me If You Can. We had an hour's chat with Philbert Bailly. My goodness, back in the
awesome.
70s, the Dream Mile in Jamaica, and
Yeah.
you hear that from the guy who won the race. It's just it's absolutely priceless.
Mhm.
Exactly.
I would add for the sort of everyday ambitious runner, being a student of the sport, well, they should follow your lead and like read up on training. And it provide, I'm sure that, I'm not sure. I would think that you feel now that you have a better filter by which to sort of judge.
Yeah, absolutely.
When all the advice that you would hear on the internet.
Yeah.
And I use one example, and perhaps commit professional suicide, but Runner's World is always going off about fasted cardio. What is fasted cardio? Well, fasted cardio, well, is this the hack you need? And as far as I can tell, fasted cardio means get up and run in the morning, get up, wake up, and then run,
run before breakfast.
And so, and so it's like, oh, you mean what people have done for like, 80 years. Got it. But if you don't know the background, if you don't know something as basic as that, then it's very easy, I think, to become taken in by, oh, well, so-and-so just said do such and such. Another great example would be HIIT, high intensity interval training. It's like, oh, you mean speed work, which people have been doing for, Pablo Nobre was doing in the 1920s, right?
Yeah. I guess also the nuance in some of those things, because like they think, like they read about it, like let's say, I don't know, fasted long run, and now they think like, oh well, all their runs should be fasted, but no, you can't fast before your speed work, because like that's not going to end well.
Right. So there's another aspect of being a student in the sport, I think, which is like sort of just learning the basics of what the best people do, and I think that, regardless of the crazy phrases that people use, you'll see a lot of commonalities. And we talk about that in the book, that there's, if you look at top people's training, the true outliers are pretty rare, right? They're all, they're doing long runs, they're doing tempo runs, and there's no reason that we all can't do the same things too at our own, apply those principles at our own level. But you can do so a lot more intelligently if you sort of know the basics, and have and be able to better judge if somebody comes up with something, says, here's the quote, the secret, you'll know that there's no secret.
There ain't no secret. And, invariably it's sort of coming full circle. You come back to the basic principles. Yeah. Are you running enough miles to improve your aerobic base? Are you being consistent with your approach? Are you getting all those B+ workouts in all the time? Are you eating some good food?
Exactly.
Like, only after you do your fasted cardio, though.
All sorts of all sorts of nice things. My nutrition tip is eat all the food. Are you getting enough sleep? And probably if there's one of the basics that people haven't really plugged into a lot, it would be the mental thing that we were talking about earlier. Have you just thought about how you mentally prepare yourself for the things that you have to do,
and how you talk to yourself?
What's your internal language? What I tell people is just put on YouTube and go and watch Courtney Dauwalter talk about any race that she's ever done any time with anybody, and just listen to her tonality, because she never says a negative thing. She never says, "Oh, I was collapsing," or "I didn't have any energy," or she catches it all in terms of challenges and manages to be positive about almost dying, out there on a 100-mile hard rock after 3 weeks after a 100-mile Western States. Her mentality is never talked about really, other than everybody just says she must be mentally tough.
Right.
But talks about it that much or says, well, how do I do that?
Right.
Just listen to it, be a student of it.
Exactly.
And of course, if you want the shortcut to being a student of running sport, just listen to episodes of Running Book Reviews, just as you said, Scott. We're here to help.
Yep.
And then go and read all the books. So I guess we can talk about the plans in the back of the book a little bit. I mean, so the plans are, like we're kind of used to, a lot of training books will have like a beginner, intermediate, advanced, or they'll have plans divided by a number of miles per week. So I know the advanced marathon is kind of divided like that. You'll have like from, I don't know, 55 to 88 miles per week and that kind of thing. But yours, they don't really have that. You have 3 plans for every distance, but they're not distinguished by difficulty in terms of number of kilometers. So what should people look for when they want to decide on which plan to follow out of the 3?
Yeah, so we did that on purpose. And I think even if you look at the 3 plans for each different event, the mileage is variable. So it's not concrete. You have to run, 70K this week or 60 miles or whatever it is. We left some variability in there because training, there are variables in your training, and you can't expect to have a perfect week every week. And so I think that I think it's better to say 6 to 8, kilometers instead of you have to hit 8 today, because maybe you do have to get to work or to a doctor's appointment, and 6 makes more sense. So you can actually take a shower and stretch for 5 minutes. So I think that's one of the things that I really like about how we devised the training in here. I think it's like fabulous the way we came up with this and didn't make it like concrete. Like I've looked at a lot of other, running books or training programs, and there's not much variability in them. You have to either you do it their way or there's no other way. And then in our training here, we made room for like life to happen a little bit. And I think that's what makes you a good runner, because like even all the training programs I write for my team, they're in pencil because they're always changing, like you don't know if someone's gonna, wake up and not feel well, or something happens in their life that's not controllable. So like everything's in pencil so we can erase and change and adapt. And that's what we really got into the training in this book. And I think it works. Like a few people that have told me that I'm friends with that have been following some of the programs, they're having success with it, and they like to have the ability to choose, to do a little bit less mileage one day or a little bit more mileage. And I think it worked well.
That's great.
One of the very unusual things I think in your plans, the plans where you have for racing frequently, because I think you're an advocate of racing. I think you say that in your book, Marc, that you're a believer in racing frequently. So you've actually got training plans for that, which you don't see very often.
No, and that was Scott's idea. So that was like a great idea that Scott had to come up with that, because like I used, like you were just saying, so like I ran the Pan Am marathon in '95 and I came in second, and then like 2 months later I set my PR in 5K and made the US team for the 5K at the World Champs in Gothenburg. And so like I just like to race, and I really think that, once you have that big, huge, aerobic strength distance background, like you can do a lot of things. I think coming off a marathon training or off of a marathon, like you can run great. Like you're strong as an ox. And like if you wanted to do a race a 5K 8 weeks later, you could probably get yourself, as long as you weren't too beat up coming off of the marathon, you could probably get yourself in 5K PR shape or PB shape pretty easily, and I think that a lot of people that we're trying to target in this book are, people a lot like you that want to race. You don't want to just train all the time. A fun part of it is going to do races and different distances. And we tried to figure out a way to have a training program that you could follow and race, after a marathon, or if you want to do a half marathon, you want to come back and do a 5K or something like that. Like, I think we did a pretty good job of like, giving you the general parameters and the good programs to follow for sure.
And then there's a separate one of like, you just, it's summer in Canada, like that's when the races are. I want to race a lot, and you might not PR, it's not the same as like building towards a marathon, but like here's a schedule to get you ready to race 4 times in the next 8 weeks over a range of distances, because that's what's available. And that's, some people really like going out and just racing a lot for a few months at a time. And I'm unaware of other running books that have like, this will get you ready to sort of be a, versatile from, I think it's like 5K, 5K to 10-mile-and-a-half marathon type.
Yeah, I don't think we've read ever like any plans like to transition over to the other distance. Although runners do it, it's just wasn't really anything outlined. But there are also runners that racing makes them kind of stressed. So what are sort of the advantages of racing? Like, why should we race a lot? Because, I know that we should.
Yeah, that's a good question too. Again, I mean, me personally, like, I like to do the different distances, whether it be a mile or 5 or 10 or whatever. I mean, I found it exciting, and for whatever reason, it didn't stress me out that much. But everybody's an individual, so some people it might bother them. But I think like if you get a 5, if you're training for a 5 and you run a good 5K, right, that might make if you're doing a 10 2 weeks later, like, oh my God, this pace is so easy. Like, I can't believe how easy this 10 is. And you get to 4 miles and you're not even tired yet because you're running 20 seconds slower a mile than you were in the 5 a few weeks ago. And so next thing you know, you have a really good 10 and you walk away with a positive experience. And, just like that, or like if you race a road mile somewhere, then like, 2 weeks later, like a 5K feels easy. Or if you're running a 5K road race, like you got to focus for 20 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is. And then you do a mile road race 2 weeks after that. You're like, holy cow, I can't believe how short and fast that was. And I was done in 5 minutes. It's like, you have these,
I know, it's impressive.
Yeah. And
a whole new perspective.
Yeah. And so I think running the multiple distances, like, it should be a positive. Like, you should, I know everybody's different, like you were saying, but I think it makes the other races feel more doable or more approachable, or sometimes it makes them feel a little bit easier than you're expecting, which is pretty cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we find the racing 10K as a precursor or a part of your training for the marathon to be fun. You don't feel any pressure. It's kind of part of your training. So you just go to race and then you usually have a good race. And then you feel positive about, wow, that was a fun race. And not only that, but I'm now feeling good about the marathon coming up because
my training's going well.
Yeah, I feel like it's dialed in.
Yep, exactly.
And oftentimes with the shorter distances, I find like I don't get it right the first time. Like, usually that's not going to be the best time in my season. It's going to be, my second race or my third race is going to be better. So it's almost like you need to get it right.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any specific tips for race day for your average sort of club enthusiast?
I mean, this is what I tell my team, especially like, going to a big meet for the first time. I was like, we don't do anything different, right? Everything's the same. You want to do the same warm up. You want to eat the same meals. You want to like go to bed at the same time. Like, try not to change anything. Try to keep it as routine as you can. And practice, like, we do the same warm up and practice for our hard days as we do for warm up for a race. So like when we go to a race, then we start warming up. It puts them in a comfortable, relaxed environment because they're so used to it. And it almost like their body knows that they're going to have to run a race in a little while, but it helps them relax. Yeah, that's a big thing is, telling my team that, like, let's not do anything different. Let's not do anything crazy. I think for like a marathon, like if you're doing a marathon, you can only do 1 or 2 a year. I think it's really important. I mean, it's just stuff you guys already know, but like the night before, like be ready to go. Like, have your number already pinned on your shirt, have your bag packed, have everything, know where everything is that you need to go to the starting line or wherever you have to go to catch the bus to the starting line. Like, so you can go to sleep not worrying about anything, and I think that's big because, like, if you haven't packed and everything, you lie down in bed and you try to close your eyes and go to sleep, you're like, all right, where's my wallet? Like, how am I going to get there? Like, have everything all figure it out, before you go to bed the night before a race. It's just like little common sense things. I don't think there's any like secret, how to get ready for a race. Like,
we kind of know that, but people still forget to charge their watch
Yeah.
before they go to bed.
Yeah.
So,
Seen it.
I didn't forget. I didn't forget. It was at 44%. It was not
Yeah,
supposed to
right.
die.
Sure.
and another sort of like boring logistical thing, Marc makes a point in the book, like just for like a normal road race, like get there in plenty of time, right? Like you've trained for this thing. It's sort of like graduation day. Like don't be the person like, rushing to get to the start line, right before the race. Like take a little bit of extra time out of the beginning of the day so that like you get to the race with plenty of time to like just the boring, like Marc's elites don't have to worry about this, but the rest of us do. Like, where are you going to park? How far is the parking from where you're going to go get, whatever, all this sort of stuff. Like a guy, actually a graduate of Marc's college, who we both know, Jim Hage, was just late for everything in his life. And I love Jim Hage to death, but like after going to a few races with Jim, I was like, we cannot travel to races together. Cause like he was, one time I was like, let me out of the car, like my warm-up consisted of like running to the start line to make sure he gets there, and so like don't jeopardize your chances of doing that. So anyway, Marc says like try to get there at least an hour before, just to put your mind at ease, so you don't have to use up all this mental energy, like, oh crap, like I gotta come my warm-up short, I haven't gone to the bathroom, et cetera, et cetera. Common sense, but a lot of, but I can't believe how many people I see, like I'm heading out to warm up for a road race and then like here's somebody pulling in, like the race starts and whatever. Like
exactly. And I think like if you're training for a marathon and it's like your big focus, like I always tell people this too, like like the week before, the 10, 12, 2 weeks before, when you're starting to rest up and you're starting to feel really good and your legs are starting to feel good underneath you, that's not the time to start like a home improvement project, right? It's not. And in the fall, like, oh man, like I don't have a long run this weekend because I'm running Chicago next week. Like, what a great weekend to rake the lawn. No. Like, let's not rake the lawn and get a tight lower back, right? A week before the race. Like, let's just get on the couch and watch something on TV or a movie, or like don't, and like the week coming into a marathon, it's like that's a good week to ask, your best friend, your spouse, to help. Like, hey, like I just want to get a little bit extra rest this week. Do you mind, if I don't go shopping? Can you pick this up for me? Just stuff like that to make your life just a teeny bit easier, going into the race. So you can just maybe grab a little teeny bit more energy into
That's
your
excellent.
system.
Yeah. You realize how that translates in my household, Marc? That translates to, sorry, dear, can't do anything. Marc said I've got to rest up. So if you could just get on with the cleaning and making the food, and you carry me up to bed, it's bedtime.
Only those last 2 weeks. Then you're on full time after. But I think that's important. Like I think people like tend to feel good, and a lot of people that train for the marathon have that type of personality that they feel like they have to be doing things all the time, and like maybe that's the one time like they should think about themselves and put themselves first.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And I guess on that note, it's a good time to ask you where you would like to direct listeners to get a copy of the book if they're interested.
Well, it's I mean, you can get it almost anywhere. I mean, Amazon.com, you could just Google it, or you can go to Amazon.com and find it really easily, I think. The publishing company has it, but probably Amazon, right, Scott?
I would encourage people to buy it wherever they see it, multiple times.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If
Well, you
Yeah.
might need an extra copy in case your dog eats one of
that's
them,
right.
you know?
That's
If I
right.
could just give a little plug for Human Kinetics, the publisher of this book. We've done a lot of books now, and we've done quite a few books by Human Kinetics. Man, they do. I don't know how they treat you guys as authors, but they do kick-ass books. You know,
They do.
really well presented, really nicely done.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they're a pleasure to deal with in terms of their office when you're trying to get in contact for books or for contact with authors.
Yeah, they
So,
answer their email like right away. I mean, I don't know what your experience is, but our
kudos
experience
to
has
those
been very
guys.
positive.
Oh,
Yeah.
but they never get back to us because they're writing back to you, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. No, they're great to work with. I've done
Yeah.
3 books. I've done 3 books with them, and
Yeah.
one of the books has had 3 editions, and
Yeah.
they're great. And
Yeah.
I think one reason that the books are, for the most part, very, very good is that they trust, they hire the right people to do the books,
Yeah.
and they trust you
Trust
to
them to
do
do it.
instead of instead of saying no, it has to be like this.
They really trust Scott. They really trust Scott, because
Yeah.
when I told the lady that, the publisher, Michelle, that I would like to work with Scott, she was happy. It made her happy to work with, for me to work with Scott on this. So it was great. And they've been super nice and supportive to me over the last couple of years.
Yeah. So buy the book from the Human Kinetics site instead of giving Jeff Bezos more money.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good then.
Yeah.
And what about yourselves? If people want to check what you guys are up to, how can they do that?
I'm on Instagram, so I just put stuff about my team up there. Well, it's not my
Okay.
team, our team,
Yeah.
and I think it's just like Marc_Coogan. I think that's my whatever it's called, handle. I don't know what you call it, but that's my Instagram. And I usually put a picture up of like almost after every practice or something, like hard practice, not just like an hour run or something like that, or races, or and the team has a website. New Balance Boston has an Instagram site, not a website,
Okay.
Instagram. Scott's out there on
Perfect.
Twitter.
No, I'm on an anti-billionaire streak, and I got off Twitter a few months ago.
Okay.
It wasn't holding up the cost benefit analysis.
It's
in
X
terms of
now.
my time. That's right. X. And also, now like I don't want to be like, hey, I was at x.com, honey.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's a whole separate thing. Like, why would you rename your company like something associated with failure, right? Or anyway, I have a personal website, scottdouglas.biz, that I never update, and I'm on Instagram posting photos of my cat. So that's
Everybody loves those.
Yeah.
not much
Excellent.
running content.
Excellent. We did some dog photographs today.
You could just I'm very, if people have reason to find me, I'm very easily found via searching for Scott Douglas Running.
And people can reach out on Instagram if like they get the book and they have a question about it. They can feel free just to DM me on Instagram, and I'll answer their questions and stuff like that.
Okay,
no problem.
That was very nice.
That's great.
Let me give my summary to the book. First of all, it's a great book for people who are looking to improve their endurance training and racing. That's kind of should be obvious to you by now. The training plans are excellent and varied over distances, purposes, and even contain things like training immediately after a race in order to prepare for another race or doing multiple races. So some unique things, I think, in the training plans there. The short cameo stories, we never really touched on those during our discussions today, but short cameo stories about Coach Coogan's athletes. Simultaneously, well, they're short, so they're nice little digestible bites, but they're simultaneously inspirational and educational. So they tell you something about a mentality of a runner, or the background of a runner, or a piece of information, as well as just inspiring you. The book sort of takes a massive amount of experience and knowledge from Scott and Marc and distills it down into a few key principles, which are then expanded out into training advice. So that's kind of how it works, and it works very well from that point of view. The other thing we haven't mentioned, there are a few short videos which you can access via a code in the book. So there are a few videos. I had a look at those just in case you said something controversial in there, but it was all very nice. So highly recommended for people who want to PR at any distance from the mile to the marathon. And that includes Liz and myself.
Yeah, I guess before I summarize my thoughts on the book, actually this goes with the first point. So, I mean, the book it's a training book, and I love that it had the mile to the marathon, because I actually wanted to train for 1500. Maybe for next year, because I'm a little tired of plugging away at the marathon distance like twice a year. I've been doing it for a while now. So I thought, like, I need to go back to the 1500 and see if I can run a PB. So anyway, I very much appreciated that. And I guess in terms of categories, I would put this book in the same category as advanced marathoning. It's not really for the beginner. You have to be willing to do speed training to do any of the plans. There are no like just finish plans, which are like, just jogging or working up to a certain distance. So that's, I guess, kind of the prerequisite for the plans. I would put them in sort of the same category as advanced marathoning. Maybe not quite as difficult, not quite as much mileage as advanced marathon has. And I also love the stories in the book. I particularly like the ones that Marc tells about his professional running career, because, it's very different from how it is now, where we have all this information. Marc didn't. It was like he met this person and learned this bit of information. He met that person, learned that bit of information. And I think it's still relevant today. I think that we can very much learn from each other. And if you're part of a club, you might already be doing it, even if you don't notice, because what do you do when you run? Well, you talk about your running with the person that you're running with, and your experiences are a little different, and you learn from each other. So I think I really like those stories. Those were a lot of fun. In terms of just the layout of the book and how the information flowed, I thought that it was very logical, progress from sort of the high level principles of training to then, environment and those other things that are important, but that, that you don't really think of first. And also I liked that he included that it's important to be a student of the sport and continue learning about yourself and about what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Really, Liz and I just wish we were professional enough so we could get into one of these teams and really learn how to work really well.
Yeah.
But we can't. So this is the next best thing we have.
Next best thing, exactly. So yeah, those stories were fantastic.
Well, if you're ever in Boston, you can come to practice. So then you can be part of it for a day or two.
Yes, Boston Marathon next year. So,
yep. Let me know. You can come over and see practice and everything.
Oh, goodness me. You don't realize what you've done.
That would be amazing.
It's an open invite. I promise. Seriously.
I'm definitely taking you up on that. We'd just like to thank you once again for spending time with us, sharing your knowledge.
Sounds
good. Thank you very much.
We hope the book goes really well. We're sure it will be. I mean, it's going to be. I think so. I think it's going to be up there with the standard books that you've got to get. Daniel's training and advanced marathoning and this book.
Mm-hmm.
Hoping. Thank you.
Especially with a title like personal best running, like who doesn't want that?
Exactly.
Personal best. Well, maybe cool. Scott, because Scott doesn't want to do any races, but the rest of us are always looking for personal bests.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. Big thank you to the publisher Human Kinetics for providing a review copy of the book, and big thanks to Marc and Scott for spending time with us today. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve the podcast, or want to suggest a book that you'd like for us to review in a future episode, please leave us a comment on social media. We are Running Book Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter we are reviews_running. Please also follow us on social media to find out about new episodes when they're released, or you can just subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. Also, we are on Buy Me a Coffee, where you can find a few little extras And so you can sign up to follow us, and that means that you'll get an email every time we post an extra, which is an advantage. If there's anything helpful on there, you can tell your friends, share a link, and same goes for the podcast. If you've been enjoying an episode, share it with your running buddies. It really helps us out. Bye for now.
Bye.